Good afternoon. This is Moshe Frank, and we have the honor today of the director, CEO of Meharry Medical School in Nashville, Tennessee, Dr. James Hildreth. How are you, doctor?
I'm very well, Moshe. How are you?
Very good. If I would have to say that I only heard about you guys from NBC recently about your developments would not be true, because my primary care physician here in Brooklyn, New York, is a Meharry graduate, Dr. Robert Feldman.
Oh, wonderful.
And a good friend of mine, a friend of mine, also Dr. David Glazer, who's the VA, the physiatry head of department in Richmond, Virginia, is a graduate, and my friend Dr. Richard Feldman, Nashville, Tennessee. So
Wow.
Therefore, I'm quite quite familiar with you guys.
Excellent.
And I must say, before we get into the interview, the only doctor in our community, our Jewish community here in Brooklyn, New York, very large, that was willing to go on camera to give direction and insight on COVID-19 was Dr. Feldman, a Meharry graduate. So you definitely doing something right there to make them to be the real leaders and top of the situation.
Excellent. That's great.
So tell us about the new developments that your medical school, university, is working on in regards to COVID-19, please.
Moshe, so we have been for a long time doing research on viruses and infectious diseases. And what we've done, honestly, is to take some of the research we've done on HIV and Zika virus and apply some of that to the COVID-19 virus. And SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus that causes COVID-19 disease, is a RNA virus like Zika and like HIV. And we're taking two compounds that we know have effectiveness against HIV and Zika. We are changing the structure slightly to make it more specific for Zika. And we're testing those two compounds against COVID-19 virus with our colleagues in Brazil and at the National Institutes of Health. So that's what we're doing.
And what are the results, and how long will it take for us people to see or able to use it?
Well, unfortunately, the process of developing a new therapeutic, whether it's viruses or cancer, whatever, can take quite some time. And normally what you do is you start in the laboratory with either cells or tissues. You then get results there, and you take those results and apply it to an animal model. Usually it's mice. In the case of viruses, sometimes it's macaques or monkeys. And once those results are favorable in terms of toxicity and all of that, you then move into humans. But because of the urgency of the COVID-19 pandemic, the FDA has accelerated the process of getting things into humans to be studied. Where we are with our research right now is we're taking these two known drugs or compounds, and we're confirming that the changes we have made will have them be as potent against COVID-19 as they are against the other viruses that we study. So we are months, if not longer than that, away from putting this into a human being.
Right, because as most people don't know, to get something to market, phase one to phase, there's a lot of things involved.
Yes.
And I was speaking to I also run an art gallery in New York. One of my clients works for Mylan, Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
What's the company called? Mylan?
Yeah.
Big company. He says, Moshe, until COVID-19, no one knew or cared what I did for a living. Now everyone's calling me. Do we have a cure? Do we not have a cure? He
Exactly.
says, people don't realize what it takes to get things to market and make sure it's safe for all people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so there's a new interest, obviously, because it's affecting everyone. And whether people have serious symptoms or mild symptoms, most people, no people, or experience some type of symptom during this COVID-19, so people really connect to it.
Right, exactly.
Next question. A big discussion these days is whether hydroxychloroquine is effective. It's not effective. It seems to be even somewhat politicized. With your experience, in the medical field and dealing with AIDS and all these types of diseases, number one is, what are the risks involved with hydroxy, and what have you guys seen the effectiveness of it, and is it worth the risk?
Well, Moshe, unfortunately, the data we have so far is inconclusive at best. And typically in a situation like this, we want to do what's called a controlled clinical trial, where we have hydroxychloroquine versus a placebo or another drug. We give that to a number of individuals. We then evaluate the results to see whether or not the hydroxychloroquine has actually made people better than if they received some other treatment. And you may be aware of this, there are a few small studies which seem to indicate that just the opposite of what we'd like to see, hydroxychloroquine might be causing more harm than good. And that's the last thing you want to see. But the bottom line is that at best we can say is inconclusive, and it's going to take a lot more controlled studies to get a definitive answer. But I could not recommend anyone that they should take hydroxychloroquine. From my perspective, at least, based on what I've seen so far, it would be not a good use of resources to do that.
But I'm just wondering, but are there similarities between anti-malaria, the disease, and with COVID-19?
There are no, to my knowledge, there are no anti-malarial drugs that have been shown to have activity against a virus, because malaria and viruses are two different organisms altogether, and their genes are different, their proteins and structures are different. So there would be no reason to expect on the surface that a malarial drug would work against a virus, and that certainly is the observation thus far.
Now, since the COVID is a virus, when it comes to mutations, is it very difficult to cover every mutation that it could possibly? Is it possible to get a cure because of all the mutations, or is it very difficult?
Well, compared to some other viruses, the genome of COVID-19 the virus appears to be stable. And what that means is that it's going to be much less challenging to develop a vaccine for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19 disease, than it would be for HIV. HIV mutates so rapidly that that's why it's been so extraordinarily challenging to produce a vaccine. To give you an example, we think that only 1 or 2 genetically unique viruses of HIV infect a person, but within a matter of weeks it's mutated, and there are literally hundreds of different strains of the virus in our system. And the whole point of the vaccine is to anticipate what virus you'll be infected with to get your immune system ready to respond. Now, clearly, if there's no way to anticipate which virus you'll get, that's what makes vaccine development so difficult. But in the case of COVID-19, thankfully, it appears that that virus is genetically much more stable than some other viruses, which should make the vaccine rather straightforward to develop.
Okay, one last thing, also on the medical. What people are suggesting, why can't we just isolate the high-risk people and then reopen the economy, as people are seeing many businesses are closing down, people are losing their jobs, as it's known that I think, I don't know the number, I don't want to say it, but in the high percentages of people can't afford losing one paycheck because then they're out of whack in all their finances, most people. So the question is, why can't we isolate the high-risk people and reopen the economy for everyone else? This way people get the jobs back, schools can open, et cetera, et cetera.
I think, Moshe, conceptually, it's a great idea. The challenge is, to be honest, we can't really predict who is going to be severely impacted by it. We can have some broad categories. Clearly, if you're older than 65, your chances of getting severe disease are much greater than if you're 25. That much we can say for sure. But there are lots of young people in their 30s and 40s who are getting very sick and dying. And we would have no way to predict these individuals because they were apparently healthy, fit, they're working every day. What we should do, in my opinion, which is sort of the equivalent to what you're saying, we should preemptively screen all the high risk and vulnerable populations to try to identify where the virus is and keep those populations protected. For example, you've heard over and over again how assisted living facilities and nursing homes are getting COVID-19 cases and people are dying. What I believe we should do is on a proactive basis across the whole country, all of them screen the staff, test the individuals who are in there, immediately identify those who are infected, quarantine them, and protect the rest of the population from getting infected. That we can do. There's no reason why we can't do that. So while we can't just, protect or isolate all the vulnerable populations, we know where the vulnerable populations are, the bulk of them at least: prisons, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, minority communities in some cases. Why not proactively screen for the virus in those populations, do the isolation, contact tracing, and we could put this virus behind us a lot sooner than if we don't do that. So that requires a lot of coordination. It requires resources. And I think what I'm saying is conceptually equivalent to what you just said, right? Let's focus on the vulnerable populations, keep them protected, and then take measures to protect the rest of the population. But that's where the focus should be. And that's what I've been saying from the very beginning.
So you're saying to test and protect the high-risk people, and now what about the rest of the world? Can we reopen the stores and everything back to normal once we have?
So what I would recommend and what I advise,
could we reopen business once that is in place?
As long as, in my opinion, as long as the employer can guarantee or take steps to protect the employees, and as long as we can take steps to protect the people who patronize that business, in my opinion, there's no reason not to reopen. But what we should all do is take personal responsibility for protecting ourselves, and if we do that, we'll protect our communities as well. What I mean by that, all the things you've heard: wear a face covering when you're out, wash your hands frequently, protect the T-zone, and we'll all be protected. Does that make sense?
Great. So in that, but in the similar direction, take care of the most vulnerable and let each individual business be responsible to make sure their workplace is safe, and let's get the economy back to started again.
That's right. And some of the companies are doing that already, and I applaud them for that.
Just an example, I didn't realize how bad it was until after the Passover, Easter holiday, my son's preschool wanted to reopen online, and out of 12 parents, only 2 parents opted in to do it online for a 2-year-old. So it's not, the education is minimal.
Right.
So I realized then how difficult it is for people financially, that if they don't have to pay, they probably can't even afford it. So that's what really hit me like a ton of bricks. That for most people, financially, this COVID-19 is killing them in crazy ways.
Well, and that's why I think that if we had a national coordinated effort where we do the things necessary, and they all need to be done kind of coordinated and within a certain time period, because viruses do not respect borders. So if one state does it really well, but the surrounding states do not, once we go back to a new normal, that means we'll be right back where we started from, because the virus is going to spread again. And that applies at the level of states, but also communities. So I think that's why we really need to have a coordinated, strategy at the national level where we're all doing it at the same time and in the same way. And quite honestly, all of us could get back to a new normal sooner. But it's not going to be the old normal. It's going to be a new normal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Doctor.
Thank you.
We hope to get back to you.
Thank you.
Sure. I hope we get back. Sure. I hope we'll get back to you when you have some breaking news of people that have been helped with your university and hospital's new innovations. And like I said in the beginning, so far the doctors you've been producing are something special. People who come out of your school being real leaders. So the big fancy schools have what to learn from you, Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you, Moshe. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thanks. Have a great.
Okay. Bye-bye.